The Moon Over the Mountain by Atsushi Nakajima. Li Zheng of Longxi was a brilliant and talented man. In the final years of the Qianbao era, he passed the imperial examinations at a young age and was appointed as a minor official in Jiangnan. However, he was proud and arrogant, with a high opinion of himself. He couldn't bear to remain a lowly official, so he resigned shortly after his appointment. He returned to his hometown, cut himself off from society, and devoted himself to writing poetry. He believed that leaving behind a legacy as a great poet was preferable to groveling before vulgar high-ranking officials. However, fame as a writer eluded him, and his life grew increasingly difficult. Li Zheng became consumed by anxiety. His appearance became gaunt, his flesh wasted away, leaving only prominent bones. His eyes, once gentle, now burned with a fierce intensity. No trace remained of the handsome, full-cheeked youth who had once passed the imperial examinations. After several years, unable to endure the poverty any longer, he swallowed his pride and traveled east to accept a minor government post in order to provide for his wife and children. This decision was also driven by his growing despair over his poetic ambitions. His former peers had climbed the ranks to high positions, and he was now forced to take orders from those he had once dismissed as dullards. This was a severe blow to the pride of the once gifted Li Zheng. He was filled with resentment and his unruly nature became increasingly difficult to control. A year later, while on a business trip, he lodged by the Ru River, where he finally lost his mind. One night, his face suddenly changed, and he leaped from his bed, shouting incoherently. He rushed out into the darkness and never returned. A search of the surrounding mountains and fields yielded no clues. No one knew what had become of Li Zheng. The following year, Yuan Can of Chenjun, an inspector general, was dispatched to Lingnan on imperial orders. Along the way, he lodged in the region of Shangyu. As he was about to set out before dawn the next morning, the station master warned him that a man-eating tiger roamed the road ahead, making it too dangerous to travel except in broad daylight. Yuan Can, however, confident in the number of his escorts, dismissed the stationmaster's warning and departed. As they were passing through a grassy area in the forest by the light of the waning moon, a ferocious tiger suddenly sprang from the thicket. It seemed poised to pounce on Yuan Can, but then abruptly turned and retreated back into the bushes. From within the thicket, they heard a human voice muttering repeatedly, "That was close." Yuan Can recognized the voice. Despite his fear, he called out, "Is that you, my friend Li Zheng?" Yuan Can and Li Zheng had passed the imperial examinations in the same year. Li Zheng, who had few friends, considered Yuan Can his closest companion. Perhaps it was Yuan Can's gentle nature that allowed him to avoid conflict with the sharp-tongued Li Zheng. There was no reply from the thicket for a while, only the occasional sound of what seemed like quiet sobbing. Then, a low voice answered, "Indeed, it is I, Li Zheng of Longxi." Forgetting his fear, Yuan Can dismounted and approached the thicket, warmly greeting his long-lost friend. He asked why Li Zheng wouldn't come out. Li Zheng's voice replied that he was now a creature of a different kind. How could he possibly show his shameful form to an old friend? Moreover, he was certain that his appearance would only evoke fear and disgust in Yuan Can. However, he was overjoyed to have unexpectedly encountered his old friend and was willing to speak with him, despite his current repulsive form, if Yuan Can could bear it. Though it seemed strange in retrospect, Yuan Can accepted this supernatural phenomenon without a shred of doubt. He ordered his men to halt their journey and stood by the thicket, conversing with the unseen voice. They spoke of news from the capital, the fortunes of old friends, Yuan Can's current position, and Li Zheng's congratulations. They spoke with the easy familiarity of old friends from their youth. After catching up, Yuan Can asked Li Zheng how he had come to be in his current state. The voice from the grass replied, "About a year ago, while traveling and lodging by the Ru River, I woke up from my sleep to hear someone calling my name from outside. I responded to the voice and went outside, where it continued to beckon me from the darkness. Unconsciously, I began to run after the voice. As I ran frantically, I found myself in a mountain forest, running on all fours without realizing it. I felt a surge of power throughout my body, easily leaping over rocks. When it became brighter, I saw my reflection in a mountain stream. I had become a tiger. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. Then, I thought it must be a dream. I had experienced dreams before where I knew I was dreaming. But when I had to accept that this was not a dream, I was stunned. And terrified. I was deeply afraid, thinking that anything was possible. But why had this happened? I didn't understand. We truly understand nothing. To accept what is thrust upon us without reason and to live without reason is the fate of all living things. That I immediately thought of death. But at that moment, a rabbit ran past me, and the human within me instantly vanished. When the human within me awoke again, my mouth was smeared with the rabbit's blood, and its fur was scattered around me. That was my first experience as a tiger. I cannot bear to recount what I have done since then. However, for several hours each day, my human mind returns. During those times, I can speak human language as I once did, engage in complex thought, and even recite passages from the scriptures. It is during those hours, when my human mind witnesses the cruel acts of my tiger self and reflects on my fate, that I feel the most pathetic, terrified, and enraged. But even those few hours of humanity are growing shorter with each passing day. I used to wonder why I had become a tiger, but recently I realized I was thinking, why was I ever human? This is terrifying. Soon, the human mind within me will be completely buried and lost within my bestial habits, just as the foundation stones of an ancient palace are gradually buried by sand and soil. Then, I will eventually forget my past, become a mindless beast, and even if I were to encounter you on the road like today, I wouldn't recognize my old friend. I would tear you apart and devour you without a shred of remorse. Were beasts and humans originally something else? Perhaps they remember at first, but gradually forget, believing that they have always been in their current form. But it doesn't matter. Once the human within me completely disappears, perhaps I will be happier. Yet, the human within me finds this prospect utterly terrifying. Oh, how terrifying, how sad, how agonizing it is, to think of losing all memory of being human. No one can understand this feeling. No one, unless they have experienced the same fate. But there is something I want to ask of you before I completely lose my humanity. Yuan Kan and his entourage were breathless, captivated by the strange tale told by the voice in the thicket. The voice continued. It's nothing much. I had originally intended to make a name for myself as a poet. But before I could achieve that, I met this fate. I had written hundreds of poems, none of which have been published. I don't know where the manuscripts are now. But I still remember dozens of them by heart. I would like you to record them for me. It's not that I want to be recognized as a great poet. I don't know if they are any good, but I cannot die in peace without leaving some part of what I devoted my life to, even to the point of madness, to posterity. Yuan Kan ordered one of his men to take up a brush and record the words as the voice from the thicket recited them. Li Zheng's voice resonated clearly from within the bushes. He recited about 30 poems, both long and short, all of them elegant in style and profound in meaning, immediately revealing the extraordinary talent of their author. However, while impressed, Yuan Kan had a vague feeling that something was missing, something subtle that prevented them from being truly great works. Having finished reciting his old poems, Li Zheng's voice suddenly changed, as if mocking himself. It's shameful, but even now, even in this wretched state, I still dream of my poetry collection sitting on the desks of the refined gentlemen of Chang'an. Dreams I have while lying in this cave. Laugh at me. Laugh at the pathetic man who failed to become a poet and became a tiger instead. Yuan Kan listened sadly, remembering the self-deprecating tendencies of the young Li Zheng. Yes, while we're on the subject of laughter, let me express my current feelings in an impromptu poem. As proof that the Li Zheng of old still lives within this tiger. Yuan Kan again ordered his subordinate to record the poem. It read, "By chance, through madness, I became a different creature. A series of calamities, inescapable today, who dares to challenge my claws and teeth? Back then, my voice and writings were praised by all. I, a creature of another kind, beneath the weeds. You, riding in a carriage, full of vigor and grandeur this night, facing the bright moon in these mountain streams. I cannot sing for long, only roar. The waning moon cast a cold light, white dew lay thick on the ground, and the chill wind blowing through the trees heralded the approaching dawn. The men had forgotten the strangeness of the situation and were now silent, lamenting the poet's misfortune. Li Zheng's voice continued. I said earlier that I didn't understand why this fate had befallen me, but upon reflection, it's not entirely without reason. When I was human, I deliberately avoided interacting with others. People called me arrogant and haughty. They didn't know that it stemmed from something akin to shame. Of course, I'm not saying that I lacked self-respect, having been known as a prodigy in my hometown. But it was a cowardly kind of self-respect that I wanted to make a name for myself through poetry, but I never sought out a teacher or actively engaged with fellow poets to refine my craft. Yet, I also refused to associate with ordinary people. This was all due to my cowardly self-respect and haughty shame. I was afraid that my talent might not be genuine, so I didn't dare to hone it through hard work. At the same time, I half believed in my potential, so I couldn't bear to be lumped in with the masses. I gradually isolated myself from the world and from people, and my resentment and shame only served to further nurture my inner cowardice. Every human is a beast tamer, and the beast they tame is their own nature. In my case, this haughty shame was my beast. It was my tiger. It ruined me, brought hardship to my wife and children, hurt my friend, and finally transformed my outer form to match my inner state. Looking back, I wasted the little talent I had. I used to spout empty proverbs about how life is too long to accomplish nothing but too short to accomplish anything. But in truth, I was consumed by a cowardly fear of exposing my lack of talent and a laziness that made me averse to hard work. There are countless others with far less talent than I who became respected poets simply because they dedicated themselves to honing their craft. Now, as a tiger, I finally realize this. The regret burns in my chest that I can no longer live a human life. Even if I could compose brilliant poems in my mind now, how could I possibly share them? Moreover, my mind is becoming more tiger-like with each passing day. What can I do? What about my wasted past? I can't bear it. At such times, I climb the rocky peak of that mountain over there and roar into the empty valley. I want to tell someone about this burning sorrow in my heart. Last night, I roared at the moon, hoping someone would understand my suffering. But the other beasts only hear my voice and cower in fear. The mountains, the trees, the moon, the dew, they all just think a lone tiger is raging and roaring. I leap to the heavens and fall to the earth in despair, but no one understands my feelings. Just like when I was human, no one understood my fragile heart. The wetness on my fur isn't just from the night dew. The darkness around them gradually began to fade. From somewhere among the trees, the mournful sound of a mourning horn echoed. It's time to say goodbye. The time to become intoxicated. The time to become a tiger again is approaching, Li Zhang's voice said. But before we part, I have one more request. It's about my wife and children. They are still in Longxi. They have no idea about my fate. When you return from the south, could you tell them that I am dead? Please don't tell them about what happened today. It's a bold request, but if you could have pity on their helplessness and ensure they don't starve on the streets, I would be eternally grateful. When he finished speaking, they heard the sound of sobbing from the thicket. Yuan Kan, his eyes filled with tears, gladly agreed to fulfill Li Zhang's wishes. But Li Zhang's voice suddenly returned to its previous self-deprecating tone. Actually, I should have asked you about this first, if I were human. I'm the kind of man who cares more about his meager poetic achievements than his wife and children starving. That's why I've fallen so low as to become a beast. He added that he hoped Yuan Kan would avoid this road on his way back from Lingnan. He feared that he might be in a drunken state and attack his old friend without recognizing him. He also asked Yuan Kan to look back at the thicket from the hill 100 paces ahead after they parted. He wanted to show Yuan Kan his current form one last time. Not out of pride, but to discourage Yuan Kan from ever returning to this place and encountering him again. Yuan Kan bid a heartfelt farewell to the thicket and mounted his horse. From within the bushes came the sound of unbearable weeping. Yuan Kan, with tears in his eyes, set off, glancing back at the thicket several times. When they reached the top of the hill, they looked back at the grassy area in the forest, just as Li Zhang had instructed. Suddenly, they saw a tiger leap from the thicket onto the road. The tiger looked up at the moon, which had already lost its white glow, and roared 2 or 3 times. Then, it leaped back into the thicket and disappeared from sight.